Author of 20 novels, 17 New York Times bestsellers, over 10 million books in print, and published in over 25 languages. Please welcome Jane Green.
Cheers.
Cheers! There are, to me, three ways one could get published. It might be self-publish, it might be hybrid publish, or traditional, where you come from, traditional publishing. Would that make sense? And what can you say about those methods of publishing, if that's right?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. It used to be in the old days there was, they refer to the big five publishers as the legacy publishers. So there's legacy publishing, and then there was what used to be called vanity publishing, which is when you would pay a company to effectively self-publish. Now there are these other options. There is self-publishing. There is also this hybrid method, which is actually very interesting. And there are one of the most successful companies that I know that does hybrid publishing is called She Writes Press. Yeah. And they actually started out as marketing people. And they're very interesting in that I believe there's a small fee to have your book published, which in the old days everybody would say stay away, anytime you have to delve into your own pocket, but I think the world has changed, and I think what's interesting about She Writes is they still have a process whereby they don't accept everyone. They are, I believe, reasonably selective about what they accept to publish, so you can't just go along and pay to have anything published, and they also do very professional looking covers, and I think you work with editors, and that's what to me is very interesting about hybrid publishing, because I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of work that goes into the book that you finish and the book that is then for sale on the shelf, and a huge amount of editing and work goes into it. And I have known people who have self-published in the past, and the books just either have been full of typos, which would have been caught by a publisher, or they just haven't been very good. And the reason they're self-published is because they rightly have been turned down by a number of publishers. However, that really is no longer the case. And the truth is, it's become an industry that is definitely struggling to find its way with the advent of technology and the internet and ebooks, and they're constantly fighting against Amazon and against self-publishing, and so they're much more reluctant to take a chance. So in the old days, they may have taken more chances on people, particularly debut novelists, whereas now, unless you have a sizable Instagram or social media following, they're much more reluctant. They're also looking to see what works, and trying to pigeonhole projects into things that they think will work. And the truth is, nobody really knows what's going to work in publishing. You never, if we knew, we'd all be making fortunes. You can't really predict what captures the public's imagination, and certainly over the past couple of years, there have been some huge books where publishers have spent seven figures on these books, expecting them to be massive hits, and they've just died a slow, painful, actually a quick, painful death. So I think really does, open the door for other options. And I've even considered it myself. I think that the hard bit is, as well as the editing, working with an editor and putting that work in, and having the humility to listen to somebody, which is something that most of us have to learn, but also the marketing that goes into it. That is the real issue with self-publishing, and in fact, even hybrid publishing. There is so much content out there now that differentiating yourself from the millions of other books is a full-time job, and requires a tremendous amount of money as well. So that's the thing. If you just want to throw a book out there to see your name on a bookshelf and to be able to say, hey, I'm a published author, and you want to self-publish, fine, anyone can do that. But to actually have a book that is likely to sell requires a tremendous amount of work.
And that team that hybrid publishing provides the repping, the marketing, the book cover, the editing. Is that correct? All of those things are there, or are they add-on kind of bolt-in services you buy along the way?
I don't know. I mean, I would hope that they offer some editing. They're going to offer the cover design. Marketing, the truth is, even with one of the big publishers, you're not getting the sort of marketing or PR that you used to. In the old days, you'd have a great big team of people who did everything for you, and now it's all author driven. So, even me, my last few books have been published by Penguin Random House, but the truth is, the way that I alert people, I mean, they will do a certain amount of online promoting, but it's really through my own social media accounts and through relying on other authors and networking. And it's hours and hours a day. And that's somebody with an existing brand name. I've sold over 10 million books. So to start out, it's going to be even harder, but that is what it requires. I always joke that in order to have a successful career, you need PhD, which in my world is persistence, humility, and discipline.
Right.
Bloody hard work.
So if you were starting out now, obviously it's different from when you began. In the time that you began to now, what's changed? There's a big question.
Well, I started writing my first novel came out in 1998. So that's 22, and I wrote it in 97. So that's 23 years ago. And the whole world has changed. And there wasn't nearly as much content. There was no internet. Computers, there were computers, but they were very basic. So you had teams of people at the publisher who took care of all the marketing and promoting. And it was very traditional. It was a lot of advertising in magazines, billboards, buses. I've been on the side of buses, metro stations, airports, all of that stuff. But now anything that your publisher does do for you will tend to be online. It just, there are publishers who will still do billboards for very big books, but it doesn't seem that particularly works. So it's really figuring out, where are your readers and how can you target them, and how can you make your book the one that makes them actually sit up and take notice. And I think that's a huge thing. A lot of the problems I've seen with the mainstream publishers is that they'll spend the money and they'll do the online marketing campaigns, but they're very generic. It's just, this is the new book by X, read it now. And nobody's going to pay any attention to that. But a really well thought out advertising campaign can make the world of difference. I recently was in Florida and I sat down with a girl called Meredith Wild, has sold millions of books, and she did it all through self-publishing. And in fact, she became so successful, she ended up, I think she signed a $7 million deal with HarperCollins. But then actually what she figured out was she was better off doing it herself, because she and her husband, before they went into writing, they ran a digital marketing company. So they really understood digital marketing. And one of the things that they continue to do, is they do this split testing. So they'll design a series of ads for Facebook or Amazon, and they will release all the ads at the same time, and they will watch throughout the day to see which one is the most successful, and that is the one that they will then get by. But that's the kind of thing that we all have to do now. We can't just be writers. And that 23 years ago, the only job I had was to produce these and edit them. Now I have to do all the marketing as well.
So it's not just a new writer, it's established writers have to take all of that on themselves. No different than a new writer. You're having to engage with that and have yourself be differentiated.
Yeah, and I would say, Well, I think, the best advice I can give is surround yourself with smart people, who are going to be honest with you. What you don't want is yes men or yes women. You don't want people just to say it's wonderful. You want people to say, well, this ad, I think perhaps what might speak to me is this. Also, go and see what works, see what makes you want to click onto something. Goodreads has become an invaluable site for people when you can create a lot of buzz with Goodreads. Promotions, giveaways, that kind of thing. Offering to team up with other authors to do group giveaways is always a good thing. So yeah, that's what is required these days.